The reaction from the NBA trade deadline is showcasing to me that there is oftentimes quite a large misunderstanding of the true value of first round picks. And the Raptors, in the end of the trade deadline, decided to conserve their first round picks, not to make any moves to get better in the present and maybe focus on the long term. So, was that really the right move for the team? And the argument against it being the right move for the team is that the Raptors are currently a top 6 seed in the Eastern Conference. I'm just going to pull up the exact NBA standings here. They're 5th in the Eastern Conference right now. They are a solidly comfortable amount ahead of the play-in tournament spots right now, 3.5 games. They are only 3 games back of the 2 seed New York Knicks, only 7.5 games back of the 1 seed Detroit Pistons. If the Raptors were to upgrade here and make a run the rest of the season, they could very, very seriously challenge for a home seed in the first round of the NBA playoffs and really make a play to win a playoff series. Now, I don't believe, like, even with one of those upgrades, they would have been true contenders, but it could have been a really interesting season the rest of the way to put themselves in a position to maybe go on a good run, maybe find some luck along the way, and who knows from there. People felt like this was kind of a season where, a year ago you trade for Brandon Ingram, you're trying to be good. Now you're in a spot this season where you're clearly competing without really having made the move to make your team better. You have the opportunity to do that, you should take it. But I kind of feel like, again, the Raptors and their stance of staying put, being conservative with their assets, was the right choice for the team. And I think where a lot of the disagreement to that take comes is that, again, there's a bit of a misunderstanding of the value of first-round picks. People look at some of, like, the misses in the draft as evidence of that. They say, like, well, from the first-round picks to pass, we've used it on Grady Dick. We use it on Jacoby Walter. These guys aren't really hard-hitting players for the team right now. We could have an impact player in the rotation right now instead. But again, it's not quite getting the full scope of the value of first-round picks. First and foremost, first-round picks provide so much flexibility towards your team because you just have way more options. You are not handcuffed by the decision of losing it in the past. Like, I remember the year Victor Wembanyama was available in the NBA draft. The Raptors didn't have their pick to use it the previous year to acquire Jakob Poeltl. When you have your first-round pick at your disposal, when you have it in that season, if the season's not going well, you have the choice of tanking. You don't feel pressure to just have to try and make the play-in tournament. You can tank. In years, you have your pick. You can decide to trade it. Look, we are a really good team. We need a player right now because we're in win-now mode. Now you can trade it. There's a lot more decisions that you can do there. In the past, I think part of the issue has been the Raptors haven't been truly good enough to contend. And then they've given away a first-round pick in that season. That hampers their flexibility. And also, the player you're picking up eventually, and sometimes often very soon after trading for them, you have to pay that player. Thinking of an example like Thaddeus Young, where you give away a first-round pick to bring in Thad, and then you give him a 2-year extension. That was a contract that handcuffed you a little bit for the next 2 years. You trade for Jakob Poeltl, give him his extension. That extension has spiraled into what has now become not a very good contract, and that's definitely making it an understatement here. Sure, they've maybe mismanaged some of the assets along the way, but it become expensive. Rookies are a lot cheaper. Rookies provide a lot more opportunity to hit different levels. And sure, it's that Family Guy, what's in the box sort of meme. It's like, oh, sure, we'll sell you this boat, or you can have this mystery box. And Peter goes, well, a boat is a boat. The mystery box would be anything. It could even be a boat when you already have the boat. But the types of players that were going for first-round picks at this trade deadline, I'm definitely taking my chances at the draft instead. Like, take a look at the types of bigs the Raptors were kind of sniffing around. They ended up acquiring Trace Jackson Davis from the Golden State Warriors for a late second-round pick, a Lakers second-round pick. The other bigs they were looking at were apparently Yves Missy, Day'Ron Sharpe, and Goga Bitadze, all of which the asking price was a first-round pick. I'm absolutely betting on a first-round pick and keeping that flexibility over going for one of these players. Would have been nice to have one of them. We would have been better. They would have been better players than Trayce Jackson-Davis, but was it worth losing a first-round pick over? To me, definitely not. I also want to acknowledge, Orlando having a first-round pick asking price for their third-string center is just utterly ridiculous. I don't know. Maybe Orlando just didn't want to trade with us, which is fine because we're similar positions in the Eastern Conference. But that's just absolutely egregious. So, anyways, those are the types of players that you're looking at here. And is that worth losing a first-round pick over and losing that flexibility? I remind you, when you trade these picks, now you have to worry about paying some of these guys a lot of the time. Whereas using these first-round picks, you have way more time to evaluate these guys. Jacoby Walter, who I kind of threw under the bus a little bit earlier, he's looked okay in his second season. You still have 2 more years of his rookie contract to really see what he can bring to your team. We still have another year to see what Grady Dick can bring to the team. Let's go back to the NBA championship era for the Raptors. I continue to make this point. Rookie contracts won the Raptors that championship. The ability for the Raptors to draft and develop talent was sensational at the time. It was a humongous driving force for that championship. You had guys like Pascal Siakam, who might have been the second best player on that team. Second best scorer for sure, on a rookie contract. You had Norman Powell on a cheap deal. OG Anunoby on a cheap deal. You had Fred VanVleet on a cheap deal. You had main contributors on these cheap deals. How the hell else can you afford Kyle Lowry, Kawhi Leonard, Marc Gasol, who you traded for during that season, and Serge Ibaka at the same time, along with other pieces like Danny Green? How can you afford these guys without having these main contributors on these rookie deals? It's important to have these levels of talent on these cheaper deals. So there's so many pros towards having that flexibility and being able to draft the players you want and getting the types of development pieces that you want in the draft. There is a lot more pros to doing that. Now, when you're in that win now mode and you need a player now, that's when you can and should be aggressive with those first round picks. But as for this trade deadline, it didn't feel like we were truly making ourselves contenders by losing first round picks. So in the end, very much feels as though it was the right decision by the front office to withhold off that and maintain flexibility with those draft picks. On top of that, some other things that were mentioned by Bobby Webster at the press conference too, that were mentioned to be important things to the Raptors to address. They were pretty insistent on not losing any first-round picks, and given the situation I described, that feels pretty smart. They didn't want to take away minutes from Colin Murray-Boyles by bringing in this big, and that's also smart, as Josh Bloomberg of TSN is pointing out, because you're bringing in a traditional center. It might make it a little bit harder to have CMB in the games, but having a more flexible big like Trayce Jackson-Davis who can play different roles. He can play as a 4. He can play as a 5. He's a little bit more switchable than some other 7-footers you can provide. You can have him in tandem with Murray-Boyles and still not eat into his minutes. Also, if you're trading away a first-round pick to bring a player in, like I said, that's oftentimes a player that you're going to want to re-sign. After all, you gave away a first-round pick in order to acquire them. You don't want to lose them at the end of the season for nothing. Bringing in one of those players, having to sign at the end of the season, would have made it more difficult to sign Mamoukelashvili at the end of the season, which is pretty big for the Raptors. He's on a player option into the season. He's absolutely outplayed his contract. That's a guy that you want to make part of your team for the longer term for how well he's played this season. So all in all, to me, it seemed like very sound decision-making. I know in the short term, people will feel a little upset because, well, first of all, the front office have put themselves in this hole a little bit with some of these larger contracts. But second of all, people will feel upset, like, we're here, we're good. Why not make yourself better? But again, I think patience is important here, and realizing that we're still very early in this process with the team and that we are not in a rush.